II. Even when a nation is deprived of its territory, the nation continues to exist. Its sovereignty and international legal personality continues to persist. The Dalai Lama, as the spiritual and temporal leader of Tibet, exemplifies this principle. In 1959, the Dalai Lama was exiled and forced to flee. Despite the challenges faced, the Dalai Lama continues to advocate for the preservation of Tibetan culture and garners worldwide support for Tibetan autonomy on the global stage. Similarly, from 1309 to 1376, the Pope of Catholicism had been in exile in Avignon. Despite this, he was recognized as the head of state as well as head of the Church, and given full privileges of the position after their return to Rome. Even in 1861, much of the papal territories had been lost, leaving the Pope with no sovereign territory other than the papal residence and related buildings. Yet his temporal powers were, despite such permanent loss of territory, the sovereignty and the international legal personality of the Sovereign Order of Malta continued to persist. Much later in 1894, the order settled in Rome and acquired two properties, the Magistral Palace and the Magistral Villa that received extraterritorial status. Today, the order maintains diplomatic relations with 112 countries, issues its own diplomatic passports, currency stamps, and vehicle registration plates, and has been granted observer status in the United Nations. All these examples of state re-establishment illustrate the principle of continuity of states, as per international law, that a state's legal personality persists over time. A nation continues to exist even after a complete loss of territory. A far more striking example is of the oceanic countries, which are under the threat of their entire nation being drowned and submerged due to rising sea levels owing to global warming. In response to such existential threat of climate change, Pacific Island nations, including Tuvalu, have enacted constitutional amendments and made international declarations affirming that their nation and their sovereign rights will continue to persist, despite their entire territory being lost to the sea. This proactive stance is highlighted in the Constitution of Tuvalu Act 2023 and the Pacific Islands Forum Declaration of 2021. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nityananda Paramashivoham, through the line of succession is the present 203rd Emperor of the Hindu Sovereign Kingdom of Surangi Samrajya. He was crowned on the 31st of December 2004 at the age of 26. Thus, by very same principles of the doctrine of continuity, through which the international legal personality of Portugal, Genoa, Poland, Ethiopia, Czechoslovakia, Albania, Austria, Vatican, Tibet, Sovereign Order of Malta, and several other nations has been recognized despite having undergone a period of exile, annexation, occupation by a foreign power, or despite loss of territory. The SPH Nityananda Paramashivoham, through well-established legal and historical facts about the Hindu sovereign state of the Surangi Samrajyam, derives all sovereign rights and powers of the royal lineage of the Surangi Samrajyam, as its 203rd sovereign emperor, from his inheritance and continuation of the unbroken succession of the kingdom of Surya Vamsa Surangi Samrajyam Sarvanapitha. Surya Vamsa Surangi Samrajyam, through unification with 20 other sovereign Hindu states and sovereign ecclesiastical, historical entities, became part of the United States of Kailasa, which thus became a sovereign, independent juridical state, with the SPH Nityananda Paramashivoham as the sovereign. Just as how the oceanic nations like Tuvalu have safeguarded their sovereignty from the existential threat of total submersion by amending their constitution and asserting that their sovereignty will persist regardless of the loss of their territory, Kailasa, which is a sovereign continuation of 21 sovereign Hindu states and sovereign ecclesiastical historical entities, is also reviving and continuing the Kumari Kandam Hindu nations that got submerged. As per the doctrine of continuity, these facts imply that the Kailasa's statehood is recognized by international law and manifests as a natural outcome of well-established historical legal facts. Share your time, talent, and treasure. Become part of Kailasa. Sign up as an eCitizen https://kailasa.ecitizen.info. Around 5,000 years ago, at the end of Mahabharat War, the ancient enlightened Hindu civilization consisted of 10,000 Hindu traditions, or sampradayas, that existed in 56 Hindu nations, 200 Hindu kingdoms, 1,700 Hindu provinces that covered more than 6 million kilometers square of Asia. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, SPH, Bhagavan Sri Nityananda Paramashivoham, is the reviver of Kailasa, this ancient, enlightened Hindu civilizational nation. Kailasa is an unbroken cultural, religious, historical, civilizational, and sovereign continuation and revival of multiple of these historical Hindu sovereign states and Hindu ecclesiastical entities. The unbroken continuity of these ancient Hindu nations through Kailasa results in the legal recognition of Kailasa as per the international customary law, particularly the doctrine of continuity. The international law, the doctrine of continuity, implies that upheavals and revolutions within a country, changes in government, territorial adjustments, measures taken during military occupation, or other internal transformations do not negate the existence of the country, do not affect the legal personality and international obligations of the country or state. The Vienna Convention on Succession of States in respect of treaties, 1978, addresses these principles of the doctrine of continuity as it outlines international law during situation of state succession or continuation. International law recognizes a state's legal personality by recognizing its identity. This perspective extends even during the period when the given state or country is annexed or occupied by a foreign power. Even in such cases, the legal personality of the state is considered to persist, enabling its subsequent re-establishment. Historical examples dating back to the 18th century include cases like Portugal and Genoa that were re-established after the Vienna Congress of 1815. More recent examples include countries such as Poland, Ethiopia, Czechoslovakia, Albania, and Austria that were re-established after World War II. Even when a nation is deprived of its territory, the nation continues to exist. Its sovereignty and international legal personality continues to persist. The Dalai Lama, as the spiritual and temporal leader of Tibet, exemplifies this principle. In 1959, the Dalai Lama was exiled and forced to flee. Despite the challenges faced, the Dalai Lama continues to advocate for the preservation of Tibetan culture and garners worldwide support for Tibetan autonomy on the global stage. Similarly, from 1309 to 1376, the Pope of Catholicism had been in exile in Avignon. Despite this, he was recognized as the head of state as well as head of the church and given full privileges of the position after their return to Rome. Even in 1861, much of the papal territories had been lost, leaving the Pope with no sovereign territory other than the papal residence and related buildings. Yet his temporal powers were still acknowledged. He was recognized as a head of state, and later, the Lateran Treaty of 1929 formally re-established papal sovereignty over the Vatican City. The Sovereign Order of Malta further exemplifies this principle, retaining international recognition as a sovereign entity despite the permanent loss of their territory upon Napoleon's invasion in June 1798. Despite such permanent loss of territory, the sovereignty and the international legal personality of the Sovereign Order of Malta continue to persist. Much later in 1894, the order settled in Rome and acquired two properties, the Magistral Palace and the Magistral Villa that received extraterritorial status. Today, the order maintains diplomatic relations with 112 countries, issues its own diplomatic passports, currency stamps, and vehicle registration plates, and has been granted observer status in the United Nations. All these examples of state re-establishment illustrate the principle of continuity of states, as per international law, that a state's legal personality persists over time. A nation continues to exist even after a complete loss of territory. A far more striking example is of the oceanic countries, which are under the threat of their entire nation being drowned and submerged due to rising sea levels owing to global warming. In response to such existential threat of climate change, Pacific Island nations, including Tuvalu, have enacted constitutional amendments and made international declarations affirming that their nation and their sovereign rights will continue to persist, despite their entire territory being lost to the sea. This proactive stance is highlighted in the Constitution of Tuvalu Act 2023 and the Pacific Islands Forum Declaration of 2021. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nityananda Paramashivoham. Through the line of succession is the present 203rd Emperor of the Hindu sovereign kingdom of Surangi Samrajya. He was crowned on the 31st of December 2004 at the age of 26. Thus, by very same principles of the doctrine of continuity, through which the international legal personality of Portugal, Genoa, Poland, Ethiopia, Czechoslovakia, Albania, Austria, Vatican, Tibet, Sovereign Order of Malta, and several other nations has been recognized despite having undergone a period of exile, annexation, occupation by a foreign power, or despite loss of territory. The SPH Nityananda Paramashivoham, through well-established legal and historical facts about the Hindu sovereign state of the Surangi Samrajyam, derives all sovereign rights and powers of the royal lineage of the Surangi Samrajyam as its 203rd sovereign emperor, from his inheritance and continuation of the unbroken succession of the kingdom of Surya Vamsa Surangi Samrajyam Sarvanapitha. Surya Vamsa Surangi Samrajyam, through unification with 20 other sovereign Hindu states and sovereign ecclesiastical, historical entities, became part of the United States of Kailasa, which thus became a sovereign, independent juridical state, with the SPH Nityananda Paramashivoham as the sovereign. Just as how the oceanic nations like Tuvalu have safeguarded their sovereignty from the existential threat of total submersion by amending their constitution and asserting that their sovereignty will persist regardless of the loss of their territory, Kailasa, which is a sovereign continuation of 21 sovereign Hindu states and sovereign ecclesiastical historical entities, is also reviving and continuing the Kumari Kandam Hindu nations that got submerged. As per the doctrine of continuity, these facts imply that the Kailasa's statehood is recognized by international law and manifests as a natural outcome of well-established historical legal facts.
Through various initiatives like Analaya, Ishanya, offering free education, free healthcare, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has exemplified the principles of Sanatana Hindu Dharma, the advanced civilization of the Hindu enlightened Hindu civilization that existed. And today, we have with us gathered all the members of Kailasa's Rajya Sabha House of Parliament, all the members of Parliament of Kailasa's Rajya Sabha, all of whom have gathered here from various different countries around the globe, who represent the Hindu diaspora in various different countries. We have the Rajya Sabhas, the MPs from members of Parliament from Kailasa, Canada. We have members of Parliament from Kailasa, San Jose. We have members of Parliament from Kailasa, Los Angeles, and Kailasa, Australia, and various different Kailasas around the world.
So now joining with us, we have various Parliament members of Kailasa's Rajya Sabha, and we are going to entering into this debate, a very, very, very important subject, where this is going to be especially to all the viewers who are watching us live there. Whether you are a born or a practicing Hindu, this is something that you need. Today we are going to be shedding light on some of the very, very, very important subject, which is going to be established statistically and bringing the evidence from the latest researches, studies, and proving the important aspects about the truth of the Hindu history and what kind of colonial oppression, suppression, and persecution the whole of Hindus have faced. And we're also going to be shedding light on the various solutions that are available and accessible for the modern day humanity to be able to revive Sanatana Hindu Dharma and to become part of the Sanatana Hindu Dharma, the revival the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has been doing and continuing to do, and by creating the seed bank of Hinduism called Kailasa.
And today's discussion, the agenda of today's debate is to discuss and examine the economic, social, moral implications of colonialism in the past, in its present, and to explore actionable solutions to dismantle the neo-colonial systems, and also to highlight the principles of Kailasa, the various initiatives that offer a sustainable, equitable alternative for global economic justice. So together, let us get ready to explore diverse perspectives, foster meaningful dialogue, and work towards the resolution that exemplifies Kailasa's commitment to creating a world where justice, harmony and prosperity prevails for all.
So now we are going to be entering into the subject of debate right now. We are going to be starting the debate, and joining with us we have the members of the Rajya Sabha from around the world, as all of you can see, and people coming from different corners of the world. Literally all time zones are present over here. And now we are going to be starting the discussion. Now we are going to be explaining how this is going to be. As the Hindu diaspora has gathered here, especially the Rajya Sabha members that are here, we thank each and every one of you for taking your time and coming here for this debate. Nityanandan, to each of the members of the parliament, the Kailasas Rajya Sabha, thank you so much for joining us here and taking your time and coming for this discussion and the debate. So guidelines are going to be very simple. Those who are wanting to talk, whatever points you're going to be presenting, each of you are going to be given a minute to 2 minutes. This will be the time frame. So you can present your perspective, whatever points, especially the statistics, given understanding the reality of what Hinduism has gone through and continuing to go through, especially in your geographical locations, and seeing the colonial oppressions and suppressions that the Hindus have faced. So we invite each of you to come and you can take the stage and you can present your perspective, whatever you want to present. And we will also be having a separate time once everyone finishes presenting their points. We will also be having the time where you can ask your questions and we can also have a meaningful discussion towards a solution as well. So now we are going to be starting with the discussion, and we are going to be inviting each one of you to be able to come and present your point, but let's also ensure that we are keeping up with the time.
So the first question that we would like to call upon for all of your inputs is to discuss and understand the impact of the colonization on the enlightened Hindu civilization, as an economy and society at large. And how did the extraction of 64.82 trillion from the Hindu's enlightened civilization during the colonial rule affects its economic foundation, and how does this legacy persist today? So we would like to call upon the members of parliament to please shed light your thoughts on these.
Nityanandamma.
Nityanandamma.
This is Manitya Divyananda from Kailasa, San Jose, the member of parliament of the Rajya Sabha member. So what you shared, I want to like to bring to attention a very important point, which was the main principle of the Hindu economic policy, which made the Hindu economy so flourishing. So in Bharat earlier, we had this Varna Ashram Dharma, where where different individuals of society, they were it was they become they based on where they are born, like Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, the specific categorization, and they excel in that. And they excel in that, and then the generations continue with more excellence. Now, the destruction of Varna Ashram Dharma by the British was a systematic effort to undermine the cultural and the social fabric of the Hindu society. And the British colonial rule sought to conquer India, the Bharat, not just military but also culturally. they actually recognized that the Varna system which we have, this organized society which we have, based on the duties and responsibility the people are taking, was integral part of the stability and the prosperity of the Hindu civilization. So what was done? They misrepresented the Varna system and they created divisions among different groups and they setting them against each and other. Now this division weakened the stability of the society and led to conflicts which which disrupted our traditional way of living. And also there was destruction of the Gurukul system, which further exacerbated this issue, as as Gurukul was a vital means of knowledge transfer and the cultural education, the education of our traditions. Now what happened with the decline of these Gurukul system, with the destruction of the Varna ashram dharma, the transmission of values which was associated with the Varna ashram dharma diminished, leading to a loss of respect for one's duties and responsibility. Now, this disruption had a lasting impact on Hindu society, connecting to a disconnect from its rich cultural heritage and spiritual practices. And Bhagavan, the supreme pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nityananda Paramashivoham, has created Kailasa, the only Hindu nation where he is reviving the Varna Ashrama Dharma by re-establishing the principles of duty, responsibility, and ethical living within the society. Now, this revival is rooted in the understanding that each individual has a unique role based on their inherent qualities, which contributes to the overall harmony and prosperity of the society. Kailasa promotes education that aligns with the ancient sacred sciences and the knowledge systems. And also with the Gurukuls, we knew these traditional roles and the wisdom and the skill that honor these traditional roles, which are defined by the Varna Ashram Dharma. Now, what happens? This ensures that individuals, they are not just educated, but they are also empowered to fulfill their dharma. Kailasa emphasizes community service and self sufficiency, encouraging individuals to engage in activities that benefit society while adhering to their respective duties. And Kailasa's efforts focus on creating a society
Yes,
where
thank you.
Exactly.
What you highlighted is a very important point. And I would also like to add to this about how in what precisely what you're mentioning is what also in a very detailed report that was Kailas's report that was published by the United Nations, where we have highlighted a very detailed study on how this very systemic racial discrimination, caste-based discrimination, and misrepresenting, marginalizing Hindu civilization and wrongly attributing caste to Hinduism. And very elaborately, very detailedly report, Kailas's report, which was published by the United Nations on issue of racism, racial discrimination, and xenophobia related intolerance. We very elaborately have highlighted this point about caste that you brought up. So thank you for highlighting that, Ma. And this also brings me to another point that I would like to call upon all of you to discuss about. We would like to ask you all, what role did colonial policies play in shaping modern societal inequalities in the enlightened Hindu civilization, such as caste, gender, and regional disparities? So we would like to request all the members of Rajya Sabha to share your thoughts on this. You can unmute and you can speak, you can share your thoughts.
Nityananda, this is Vinesh from San Jose. Building off of what Madhyavananda had said, Hindus are generally unaware of the full extent of the colonial economic, cultural exploitation that took place during the British rule. In the economic part is very striking because in 1760, after 1,000 years of invasions and looting and plundering, India still represented 27% of global economic output, which is almost 1/3 of entire globe's output. Amazing figure, even after all that devastation. But after only 200 years of British rule, we were down to 3% and completely impoverished. This didn't happen randomly or organically. This was very systematic. The British suppressed all native industries. They taxed Hindus into poverty. They seized temple administration and temple wealth. They banned gurukuls. They banned Hindu practices in many forms. They kind of established this caste system in a very negative way to divide and conquer us. And Oxfam put it very clearly for all of us to see a few days ago. That $64.8 trillion of wealth was transferred from India to Britain during that time of their rule. And India was left completely destitute. And what most Hindus don't realize is that Bharat, once it became independent, we think everything was fine then. But things didn't change. A lot of the colonial ideas, institutions persisted well beyond independence. And to this day, where the Gurukul system is still very much suppressed, temple wealth and administration is still controlled by the government. Hindu practices like firewalking and other things are still banned. And I think the persecution of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism provides a very clear, vivid example of how this is going on to this very day, to the point where he had to leave Bharat in order to fulfill his mission. And this is why we need Kailasa, the ancient, enlightened, Sanatana Hindu civilizational nation, to be a seed bank for Hinduism, not just to preserve it, but also to revive it and bring it back in its full flowering authenticity.
Thank you, Aya. Just one thing, you are someone who has a legal background. You are someone with a background as an attorney and familiar with the laws. I just wanted to ask you, now from this perspective, especially when you are seeing the modern day system that is there established in the modern day India, not the Hindu nation that we had, but the now secular nation that is there, what do you see as colonial, what was there a colonial implication in the moral systems? How do you see the implication of the colonial era still being there? And actually, it is like how the Oxfam study had put it. It's just a change. It's literally like a change of dress of the same colonial set, just to the modern upgrade. So what do you see? Can you give us some references that you are able to see as still prevalent laws, which clearly show how it is not an independence, but actually the mindset is still continuing and it is still suppressing and oppressing?
Yes, well, the economic exploitation, the example that I find most striking and most horrible in a place that claims to have religious freedom is that the temples themselves, that are the very wealth of Hinduism, the very center of Hinduism, are still completely controlled, not by Hindus, but by the government, which claims to be secular. And it is not for Hindus, it's for supposedly everyone, but they take that wealth and then they divert it to other causes, leaving those temples in disrepair, leaving them out of control of their own wealth and their own destiny. They can't even control what land they control, what they do with those structures. They're completely bound by regulations and by laws that are not designed to protect them or anything. It's designed purely to control them and suppress them. And we see the result of it when you visit India, when you see the condition of some of these temples. It's very, very tragic. And the Gurukul example is also a very striking example, because Swamiji has shown us through his own experience and his mission how by the simple act of establishing a Gurukul, he was attacked completely through all sorts of laws and all sorts of so-called, again, child protection laws and various things that sound very good on paper, but are actually designed to control and suppress and undermine Hindu native rule. And and I think Madhavinanda also made a great point about Varnashana Dharma. Under the auspices of child labor laws, a son can't learn his father's profession. But in the original system in Bharat, that was actually a great wealth, because it allowed, by the age of 16, you could be an expert in your field. And that, as those skills got more and more specialized, it led to India becoming an economic powerhouse. But that today is considered completely illegal and completely anti-child, which is absurd. But it's like I said, to people on the outside, it sounds like a nice, noble principle, but in practice, it's actually quite destructive and quite exploitative.
Thank you,
That's-
Aya. That's a very important point that you had addressed.
And like you highlighted, because even in the report, it clearly says that to this day, 3.6 billion people, which is 44% of the humanity, lives on less than $6.85 per day. And number is same as in 1990. So there's even the modern, so many social institutions that are forming and so many organizations that are coming together to work on helping the poverty. But on the other side, the billionaire wealth has it that rose 3 times faster than in 2024 than in 2023, which means it is only on the increase, which is the richest 1% in the global north receive approximately $263 billion annually from the global south, which is equivalent to a rough of 30 million per hour, whereas the majority of the poverty population is largest global south as opposed to the global north.
And it was also the absence of this, the policies of what the Hindu jurisprudence had, the Hindu constitution had, because the Hindu principles were the reason why, despite of so much of persecution and attacks and the Holocaust that we were subject to,